Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's success story interview, where we are going to be speaking with Mo, who recently matched in the 2021 match. So, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. I'm really excited to hear about your experiences and your time in medical school up through the match and beyond. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what specialty you applied to, where you matched?
Sure. Yeah. I'm originally actually from Iraq. I moved to the States in '07, kind of learned English here in high school.
Wow.
And medicine has always kind of been in the background. Yeah, both of my parents were physicians. I kind of grew up during the time of the Civil War in Iraq. And so, like, their impact while working during the Civil War really shaped a lot of my careers. And so I've always wanted to go into medical school, but moving here took a lot of time to kind of navigate the different factors, especially since my parents were doing their own job trying to get back and redo the residencies. And so while I was trying to shuffle housework, school, and then raising my little sister, it took a lot. I mean, finally, I made my way to medical school, and I ended up going to at UC School of Medicine, which was in St. Martin. The journey was a bit unorthodox, given the fact that during my first day on St. Martin, we got hit by Hurricane Irma. We got kind of
Oh, man.
displaced, and we were
Welcome.
stranded for like 5 days. Basically, it was a great welcoming to the island. But honestly, I'm very thankful for that experience because I feel like it kind of launched my medical career. It gave me kind of the confidence to kind of rediscover myself. I'm someone who doesn't know how to really sit on the sidelines. I'd like to be involved. And I'm very thankful because through that, I ended up moving to the UK for a semester and then coming back to the island and helping with the rebuild. And then during my clinical rotations, with COVID, I moved around all over the United States just to make it in time for the application cycle. But yeah, it gave me an opportunity to kind of like discover myself, be really involved in school leadership and mentorship. So I'm very thankful. And so thankfully, I was able to apply to this specialty of my choice, which was internal medicine, just because I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, but I'm not really sure about the specific specialty.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was able to eventually match at UTMB, and I was really, really happy because my ultimate goal whenever I left medical school was to come back and match in Texas because I want to practice in Texas, and I want to be closer to my parents, who I haven't been really close to in the past 10 years, given the fact that
Right.
my journey has taken me all over the United States.
Yeah, I bet they're happy that you're going to be closer to them.
For sure, for sure.
So, can you talk a little bit more about what sorts of leadership experiences and hands-on experiences you had in medical school that sort of helped shape you and that you mentioned helping kind of redefine you as a person?
Of course. I really am like, and that's something that I usually tell, the first semesters that come in and whatnot, make sure that you get involved in something that is worthwhile, like
Uh-huh.
that because you can talk about that. It shows that you're really passionate about it. And that's something that you really can't do otherwise, because if you're not passionate about something, you won't be it will be just a job. And, don't do something just for the resume. A lot of people, want to just beef up their resumes just to make sure that, there's names on them. But if you're asked in an interview about it, it's very easy to tell whether you're really passionate about something or you're not. So I just kind of I started when the hurricane happened, I started doing like I was part of a medical triage team that we formed with a couple of colleagues and mine, and I was really involved with that. And then from there, we kind of set up our own kind of like mobile clinic for those 5 days we were there. When I went to the UK, I was the first, I ran and became the first semester representative, and I worked with the relocation services. So I just kind of said yes to opportunities, and that's something was really, really important. I was kind of like, I've always, that's how I really approached, learning English. That's how I approached moving around so much in my career before medical school, is just kind of saying yes to opportunities and not being afraid, because I feel like a lot of people will doubt your ability, oh, how do you handle medical school with a lot of leadership involvement and whatnot. And the way that to do it is to basically just be very, very honest with yourself. This is my responsibility. I'm going to say yes to this job. I'm going to do my best to make sure that this job is done correctly, so my academic work does not suffer. Which is funny because like when I started medical school, I wasn't, as busy. I was just had school. And then as I increased in my, let's say, level of involvement, becoming the president of the Student Government Association and further on, it actually made my grades go higher because I felt that I
Wow.
needed to keep up with, I had a responsibility. So I needed to keep up. Therefore, my grades needed to be better. So I feel like it actually, helped me elevate my status and kind of like set me on a right path. And that goes to the same thing for all the other activities, whether it's like community service or whether it's like research opportunities. Saying yes and then being just honest with yourself about the responsibility is goes a long way.
How did you keep balanced with being so busy and obviously, doing all the things in medical school? Were there any ways that you were keeping track of your, mental health, physical health, just your well-being in general?
For sure. I think one of the biggest motivators, I guess, was obviously like I had a lot of internal motivation. I wanted to succeed. I wanted to kind of like I was playing almost with like a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to kind of prove to myself that I can do this. But more than anything, I always say like find a group of like-minded individuals who can push you to be better. And for me, I found a small study group that kind of just formed out of like, like a few of my friends that I had met in the beginning. We were all in the medical team and we kind of stuck together and kind of like held each other accountable, and I'm always very, very honest about like my academic struggles and whatnot. I always say that I'm not the best student, but I'm definitely a very hard worker.
Hmm.
I'll put in 110% of the work, and I always ask for feedback. And that was one of the biggest motivators because to me, I could ask my friends who were, we had a group of 4 people basically. It was me and then 3 of my other friends. And then we kind of helped, we basically met every single week and we went through the material for that week. And a lot of times I really didn't understand what was going on. And so like I would ask for help in that regards. And I would try to like improve my studying abilities to match them because these individuals are doing really, really well. And that's something that I always tell people is like find individuals who are either at your level or above your level so they can elevate you, and together you can help each other. And that's what we did. I'm very happy with the fact that we made it throughout this journey, kind of like even keeping each other, even during clinicals, we were keeping each other like appraised of like, oh, these are the deadlines you need to be aware of. These are the things that you need to do. And then finally, we actually ended up like going through each other's like entire application. We sat
Hmm.
together, we found a place, and we sat together. Even though we were all over the place, we met like one time in one of the clinicals, and we sat together and we spent 8 hours going through each other's applications and pointing out what are the things that are go wrong and what are the things that are go right. And I'm very happy to announce that all 3 of my other really close friends matched in the specialty their first choice, and then we're in the places that they are. So we were ultimately successful, and I think that's a big driving force. So like find a small net, small close-minded people that you feel you trust that can push you to be better. And that's honestly how I kept saying. That's how I kept kind of accountable with people because I had people kind of like internally supporting me, and I had my own belief that I can make it as well.
It's really incredible. Do you remember any specific things in the application that were consistent that when you were reviewing each other's documents, whether it was something in the ARIS application or personal statements, that you kept noticing or that you all felt like there was areas for improvement that would be common for people applying in the future?
100%. I think like a lot of people don't realize that they actually do look at the whole application. So if it's on your application, they'll ask you about it. Like, and so
Right.
that's you have to be really, really like if you're going to include it in your application, you have to be very, very comfortable about talking about it whenever you're asked. Because like I've had people, obviously the same thing is going to a lot be repeated. Is like, tell me a little bit about yourself, or tell me about your research experience at their university program or something like that. But more than anything, they'll ask a convoluted question about a project you might have done, or an activity. Oh, my first interview I was asked about an ethic course that I took. And they're like, I saw that you did really well in ethics. I love medical ethics, and I've never been like, and that was something like so insignificant in my head that and so I had out of nowhere to kind of like talk about the fact that why am I interested in medical ethics and why I did so well. And I was able to actually draw back to an experience that I had during graduate school where I took a course on biomedical ethics, and I tied that back into the medical ethics. And he was really, really, he liked that answer, right? I had people questioning. I had some interviewers who just didn't really want to talk about anything except like my hobbies, which is people sometimes like kind of like overlooked, but it's actually hugely important because you have to
Mhm.
understand they go through a lot of applications. And so they have to find something that is different among you. And so like, oh, this guy likes, to go hiking. And but whenever I say hobbies, like don't say like, oh, cooking, cleaning. No, give them a little bit of context. Like I love cars. I love working on cars. I did this, this, this. For me, I was like, I love watching sports. I'm an avid Manchester United fan. I went to visit Manchester United when I was in England. I also followed this and this and this. I was like, I love traveling and I love hiking. And so I've listed all the places that I've been to and all the national parks I discovered. It gives them some context there. So it says like, you're just kind of listing things for the sake of it. And then also like things like, and I notice this a lot, is that people who kind of like don't necessarily expand on the experience, because in the ERAS application, in the experiences, there's three types. There is volunteer, there is research, and there's work experience. And work can be like expanded on, like if you feel like you worked in a place, a volunteer experience could be considered a work experience if you did
Mhm.
work like activities, basically.
Right.
I had a scholarship to pay for, a certain part of my a certain activity I did. So I considered that to be work, I was a resident advisor, so I consider that to be work. And then you can list specifically what you did. So your experience explanation can be concise so they can get an idea of what you did. And then also, talk yourself up in it. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to talk about themselves, but it's your time to shine in the application, and kind of like using that, like, I did this, I did that, instead of like, so and so was done, so and so was accomplished, like I accomplished this along with this, so they know that you're talking about yourself, you're actively participating in your own application, you know not you're just not a passive, you could say, like, you're just not a passive person, like in your own application, your own experiences. And I think that's a huge important whenever I was reviewing, because like I made sure that I was very, very active in my own applications and I can talk about them.
Is there anything that you would do differently with the application or the application process or interviews or following up with programs if you had to do it again?
Honestly, like I kind of like went all out this application cycle. Like
Yeah.
I kind of like kept like, I just didn't want to leave any unstore. That's something I would generally recommend to anyone. Like, if there is a 1% shed that something that you feel like maybe I should do something, just do it. You know, so from like the languages that you list in your application to the amount of experiences to things that you do even like before and after the match. Like for example, like um, I knew that my personal statement was solid because my story was solid, but I wrote that personal statement like I think like 17 different times. Like it's the same
Mhm.
application. I rewrote it 17 different times, and I had specific personal statements for the programs that I really wanted to match at.
Right.
And so like I actually had like what I did is I basically made a general one, and then I added a paragraph, for example, for Texas, and I added a paragraph for those specific schools that I wanted. Like, there are certain like 5 programs that I thought I could see myself in. So I added those specific programs, something about that program that attracted my attention. The other thing is that I think that was really important is that like I'm always like I said, I don't get shy about asking for feedback, and I don't get shy about asking for things in general. And so that's really important. So like I sent so many letters of interest, it's not even funny. Like I think I sent over 50 letters of interest,
Yeah.
to different programs, and I got 4 interviews out of that. And in my head, that's a pretty good return, honestly, because
Definitely.
you never know who's going to listen, you never know. And then when I was sending like letters of interest, I was being very specific about those programs. So yes, I kind of like went to the max and stuff like that, but I also was really committed to getting those letters, to getting those interviews, because I was not I'm never satisfied sometimes unless I make sure that I've done my best. So that's really one of the main things that I would say I really focused on. Would I do anything differently? Maybe if it wasn't COVID, maybe have done like maybe more sub-Is, because I was barely able to fit in a sub-I, like
Right.
just to make sure that I have one. Like as the application was opening, I wasn't really able to fit it with my schedule before that. Thankfully, that didn't really make a difference. But the letters also that I got prior to the sub-I were very solid, and I was very, very specific about my like I wanted to make sure that like I kind of had to do the most with what I had. And thankfully I was very like I kind of engineered my own way through it. So I had a letter from a program director, and where I did my 3rd year rotation in internal medicine. I had a letter from the same hospital, from the director of ambulatory medicine, and I had a letter from an internist there. And then my fourth letter, I actually ended up getting it from the provost of my own institution, because I thought that that would actually give, kind of like, the fourth letter, I wanted to be like the X factor, because I feel like if I added another internist letter, it really would not have been as impactful as my own school's provost, because I feel like she has seen me work throughout, my 4-year career, and I thought that she would be able to give kind of a different aspect to my personality. And that's what I mean whenever by being smart and engineering your own kind of like um opportunities, and kind of being like, it's like, what will give me that X factor, because everyone is going to have letters, everyone is going to have personal statements. So those little things that you can make yourself stand out to just kind of reaffirm who you are as a person goes a long way.
Did you apply with 4 letters of recommendation to every program, or was it just when they asked for 4 letters specifically?
Mhm. So because I did not anticipate getting any more letters down the line, I did. I made sure that I applied with those 4 letters that I had just listed previously, because I really didn't think that I was going to go get another letter and then have it. And at the same time, I really didn't want to kind of like tell the programs, "Hey, look back at my application." The only time I did that was when I was waiting for the ECFMG verification to happen, or which
Ah,
I was kind of like very, very, very like scared of, because that's something that some programs were waiting to hear from me about. Because as you know, if you're a Caribbean medical graduate or someone who's still in school and you're applying for the ECFMG, you don't get certified until you graduate. But you can get verified if you complete the proper, like in our case, was the pathway application. So they were waiting for me to be verified essentially before they can send me an interview. So some programs didn't care about that. Some programs were very, very like insistent on that. So I guess that's one thing that I could have improved on, is get that verification early on. I mean, that's something I would recommend students do in general, is get their verification done early before they can actually, because you're competing with individuals who also have already had their certificate because they've already graduated from medical school, while us as like students who are still in school, we don't get certified because you need to be graduated from that. So yeah, I applied with all 4 letters, and that was my goal.
I have a question back to the letters of intent or the letters of interest when you were trying to get more interviews. Were you addressing those to the program director or the coordinator or both? How did that work for you?
So I kind of mixed and matched in a way. I kind of like addressed some of them to the program coordinator, some of them to the program director, and you have to understand that I didn't send like 50 right away. It was kind of like different rounds. So like I would send 20, and then I would send when I sent them, I didn't send them to every single program. I sent them in regions that I wanted to match at. So I knew
Right.
that for myself, like I really wanted to match in the South. Because I just don't handle the cold weather that well. And so like I targeted Texas mainly. So, a lot of my letters of interest were about Texas. So I can, like also draw on my experiences and all the things that I had done in Texas. And then also Florida. And then any in the southern place like Louisiana, a lot of the places that I, saw myself, matching and being okay with kind of completing my education. And so some of them I addressed whoever actually I was able to get the information. I mean, that's one of the main things that I got from Match Residence. I was able to actually really get like the emails that are really sometimes hard to get,
Right.
like who's the program, because a lot of programs don't like to put that information, understandably so, because they get a lot of emails and whatnot. But I had to do a little bit of digging to kind of find all the different program directors' emails. And sometimes I had to like, look in archives then if they weren't on Match Residence and whatnot. But that's really what I did, is just depending on the program, whoever I found the email, I would send that to. And sometimes it wasn't really, I don't think I've gotten any response, but something people don't realize is that what I usually do is on Outlook, if you have an email and if you send an email in Outlook, you can actually ask for to like the system to send you a delivery notice and a red notice. So at
Hmm.
least knew that they opened the email, even if they didn't respond to it,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And then, and so that's how I really gauged who opened my emails and who didn't, is because like I put that feature, I turned on 3 features on my emails, the high important, I raised the importance level of the emails, and I also get, the delivery and the read. And so I was able to gauge like, okay, this person did not read the email. Let me try and send it to the program coordinator instead. Or this
Wow.
program director read my email. I don't need to send it to the program coordinator, things like that.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean that's some very helpful insight how you can kind of add a little bit of strategy to even just emailing, whether it's seeing that programs have opened them or not, and gauging how that has helped your candidacy. And it sounds like you said you got 4 more interviews out of about 50 emails, which is pretty good ratio for getting some more interviews. And how many interviews did you have in total?
I received 34, but I accepted 27 at the time, like knowing that I just, like this cycle was kind of like really weird. So I was really scared. And so like once I was accepting in the beginning, and so I had to go to them. And then like after a period of time, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna need those. So I ended up canceling
Uh-huh.
uh till the end. And so it was kind of like some of the programs, I would have maybe cancel in the beginning, but I was a scared medical student, who wants to make sure that I matched. And so I was trying to go to as many ones as I want. And so when I was finally reached a number that I was satisfied with in the programs that I wanted, I was like, okay, that's it. But I will say that I even like a program that I had ranked number 3, I received an interview from in February. So
Hmm.
people like it was like the last possible day they had, and I still received it, and I ended up ranking them number 3. So it really just kind of varied on when the interviews came, but yeah.
And how many programs did you rank? Did you rank all 27 of those, or did you just rank 15, 20? How did that work for you?
So I'm again, it goes back to my like kind of like I'm very neurotic about this issue where I'm like, I have to make sure that I I, I kind of beat it until it's done. So I ranked all 27 just because like
Uh-huh.
I was like my and then that's what I tell people is like what are you trying to get out of it? Like my desire to match was more than my desire to match where I want. Like yes, I would love to match where I would like match in my top programs, but ultimately I want to be a physician and I want to have a job and I want to, I want to learn and I want to move on with my life and I want to match. And so I was making sure, I prepared myself mentally that if the 27th program had, saw something in me and accepted me, then I will go there. And so I ranked all 27 programs. And in ERAS, you have to pay a fine actually if you rank more than 20. And
Right.
so, but for me, like I was like, hey, I'm already in debt. Like, what more can I, like this journey, like I remember like just submitting applications cost me close to $5,000, you know,
Yeah.
and that's another thing, like, so I was like, what is another $200 going to do in the whole grand scheme of things is going to give me a better opportunity, if that makes sense.
Were you able to distinguish what you should put as 21st versus 22nd versus 23rd versus 16th versus 17th? How did you actually make those decisions when it came down to creating a list of nearly 30 programs?
I actually took my parents' advice with that. Whenever I started interviewing, they told me to make a spreadsheet and kind of like I kind of made a spreadsheet and I divided it by like program name, like place, what they are like. I highlighted things like what I call like kind of like the vibe, like or more like gut feeling, like what do I felt about after the interview. Then I put their salary, their number of vacation, their like all of these different things. So as I was going through as I was going through all these interviews, I end up filling, the information, and I even added their website. So just in case I need a refresher, I just go back to the website and look at it. And it gets really difficult for a while after a while because everything starts sounding the same. Everyone starts
Right.
kind of like meshing together. After the 10th interview, you just can't remember. And so that's what I kind of like used. Ultimately, I kind of created my own system where like, of points basically, where like if it's a Texas program, it got a +2. If it's like a program that is a university program, it got a +1. And that's how I really rank them. So I started with my top 5. And I was like, all right, these are my top 5. And then I expanded to my top 10, and then I did the bottom 5, and then the in between I kind of was like, all right, so let's talk about, I asked my parents' advice and whatnot, and my dad, one thing that he recommended, he's like, all right, if you're going to be far, at least be near an airport that can bring you down to Houston if you want. So
Yeah.
I kind of really went with that as well, and I also went with the fact that I didn't want to end up north, like in New York and whatnot. So I might have actually ranked programs that were not necessarily as higher stature, for example, as the ones in New York, a little bit higher because I was like, all right, I want to stay in a warmer climate, even though the program in the north might be better. So really, it really, everyone has their own preference, but I would say the best way to do it is go for top five, bottom five, and then kind of figure out an arbitrary way to differentiate the ones in the middle.
Perfect. Yeah, it sounds like you had a very structured system which helped, organize that many ranks. So again, both of your parents are practicing IMGs in the United States now, correct?
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, their influence and maybe, I mean, you just mentioned some of their really good advice. How has their journey as IMGs helped, shape your path as a matched IMG now?
Absolutely. We moved here because we got a death threat during the Civil War. They're both, fantastic physicians in the country. My dad was a hematologist oncologist. My mother was, an ophthalmologist. And we came here, they were 48 and 42.
Wow.
Now their impact on me is it can't even be described because, they taught me, the importance of hard work, the importance of perseverance, and the importance of resilience because I saw it in them. I saw a 48 and a 42-year-old do everything in their power. They worked as visiting professors for 3 years before they were able to land a residency position. And then they started residency even, I think my dad started residency in his like early 50s, finished internal medicine residency. My mother started her residency in neurology, then she did a neuro-ophthalmology fellowship and she became a fully licensed neuro-ophthalmologist. And my dad, did the same thing. And now they're, like they actually ended up going back to the place that where they were visiting professors at as fully fledged licensed physicians. And so that was a moment of pride. It took a lot of moving and, moving all over the country because, they had to go all, they had to be separated. They had to move all over the country to try to get, they did internship in one place, residency in the other. And then, they taught me a lot in that. And so like I really knew about the struggle of an IMG before I was even like kind of faced with that. Never did I think I was going to be in the same situation, and albeit in a much milder situation. I consider myself to be very, very fortunate. But the struggles that they kind of faced all these years ago kind of shaped my own journey and gave me a motivation to kind of appreciate their own. And going through it, I was like, oh my God, like they had to go through this. And I have this, but I have like access to so many more resources than they did, but they did it at the time. It's an incredible opportunity. It was an incredible achievement that kind of really kind of pushed me to achieve the things that I have.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that if they can do all that and they, persevere through all those challenges, moving all over the country, being separated. I mean, that's so inspiring to be so close to and have that as a source of guidance and inspiration. Um,
100%.
yeah. So do you have a top takeaway or best piece of advice that you would give future candidates?
Absolutely. I would say like one of the main things that like really a really important thing is like know what you want to do. Like I understand that like this is really more directed toward like um, fellow IMGs who are maybe in this school or they're still in like Caribbean schools or whatnot. Like know what you want to do and what your goal is, and make yourself comfortable with that idea. Like don't be applying because you want to apply or into a specialty that you want to apply. If you want a specialty or if you want to match in a specific place, if you want, start early. Have that like in the back of your head. Like I cannot stress the importance that like if you're starting medical school in first year, you should be already having that as a kind of like a thought process, like, hey, this is what I want to do. You can figure things out on the way, but you need to have that in the back of your head. Don't say like, I'm gonna punt this down because that's again like it's gonna come to you very, very quickly. So number two, like follow up and prepare. I cannot stress this don't trust anything. Don't trust a system. Don't trust like a program. Don't trust like your own self. Like just follow up because ultimately something is going to go wrong and you'll be surprised at how many times you can actually find something that wasn't there or something that could have been wrong. Like I cannot tell you the amount of times where like I avoided pitfalls by just being very diligent about what I do and being very, very much like neurotic almost to a certain level. And I really, really believe that really worked in my advantage. Number three, say yes to opportunities. You never know what type of connections you can form. I'm really big on interpersonal connections and whatnot. Like I love talking to people, and I think that came at a big advantage to me because I was able to formulate a lot of different connections. And you never know who can vouch for you, who can really kind of like give you some much needed advice. So I always say like listen first and then talk. I was like, whether they know more than I do, or even if they know like less than I do, but they have information in a specific topic, I'm there to listen. I'm there to take in their advice. And if there is an opportunity that arises to do something, then by all means take it by the horns, so to speak. Take any and every opportunity, because you never know who's going to be listening, who's going to be looking, and what that one opportunity can lead to more in the future. And then honestly, finally, kind of like stay the course. It's a very, very long and stressful journey. Like no one really knows. It's kind of a different feeling. Like I'm still processing my own match. I really haven't really it hasn't really fully hit me almost. It takes a lot out of you, and that's why I kind of go back to my kind of like have a support system of like-minded individuals. If it's not family, then it's like your colleagues or your friends, someone who you can kind of lean on sometimes when things get really tough, and it will get tough. But ultimately, if you stay the course and you believe in yourself, then I think you'll be able to make it through.
Wow, that's a very powerful summary of really incredible advice. And you've been, sharing so much insight and so much personal experience and advice throughout this whole interview. It's been incredible. I really hope a lot of people are able to hear your story and see that doing these things leads to success, and, being having perseverance and having that support system, planning ahead, doing all these things the right way will lead to matching at some of your top programs. So thank you so much for sharing all that information and taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.